Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and it's time for a special review. I've got Browncoat Eric on the phone.
Hey.
And
special
today...
in quotations.
What's that?
I said special in quotations.
Yeah, and well, special in the sense that it doesn't fit into...
Mediocre is probably what we're going for right now.
Well, special in the sense that it doesn't fit into any particular format of any of the shows that we do on this channel. But we thought about doing this as a podcast, but then we decided we didn't have a half an hour worth of material for this, probably, although we've said that before. But today we're going to review Batman Year One, and it's a movie that we were both surprised and not surprised by, almost simultaneously. Eric, go ahead and start us off.
It's the book.
And we're done. There we go.
No. It is literally like scene for scene, panel for panel, just the book. If you like the book, you're gonna love the movie, or you won't. You'll be bored because you've seen this.
See, that's what I had. Because I made the mistake of reading the book again an hour before I watched the movie.
I read the book a month or two ago, so it wasn't completely fresh in my mind, but it was somewhat fresh.
So I felt like I just read it, and then I read it again.
Yeah, it's like... Frank Miller has this really good track record of getting, like, line-for-line adaptations of his work.
I think part of that is because he's kind of tough to adapt.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, what I mean is his... Okay, what I mean by Frank Miller is tough to adapt is that, at least for his big stuff like this that everybody remembers, is nobody wants to mess with his lines.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, what would you change? What would you cut? Yeah.
There is a thing, and it's in all of Frank Miller adaptations, with the exception of 300, because everything sounds fine when you yell it. But it's in Sin City. You know, it's in this. It's in the spirit. Some of his lines just are not meant to be spoken.
No, absolutely not. And I also felt like some of the imagery in this wasn't really meant to be moving.
The biggest one for me is the one where Gordon has that moment where he's like, I don't know if this city is safe to raise a child, and then right behind him is Batman. Now that works perfectly in the comic book because he's saying it, Batman's in the background, but the way they shot it is, he says it, then we kind of like cut to Batman.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not exactly the same kind of imagery, and you're right. There's actually, imagery is kind of my biggest problem with this entire thing. It wasn't dirty enough.
I would agree with
I'm
that.
not a fan of the artwork of the book. I don't like it, and I love I think it's Mazzucchelli. I really liked him on Born Again. I do not like the artwork in Year One. And my biggest complaint with this is this looks like everything else they've been doing. Like, it looks very polished, and it didn't fit the tone at all.
I didn't get that from it. I mean, I felt like it was I felt like visually it was grimy looking enough. I just felt like they didn't go far enough. Like one of the things that you mentioned before we started recording was that you didn't like that they didn't have any smoking in this, and I agree with that. There are some things like that they cut out that I felt like made it not feel grimy enough, and I also don't think... Sorry, go ahead.
There's a couple of specific scenes that are, like, to me, iconic scenes that don't exist in the film because there's no smoking. There's the two that really stick out to me is when she's... I think it's Ellen. The one that he cheats on his wife with, when she's like lighting up a cigarette in the rain, like that's for some reason the image that sticks out to me. And obviously the last panel of the book is him lighting up the cigarette,
right?
Saying the Joker's, somebody's poisoned the water hole.
Yeah, and this is clearly not set in present day. I don't really understand why they felt the need to cut that out.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know why we are so careful about that these days. I mean, it's like, you've got a PG-13 movie, you've got language in this, and you're like, oh, but smoking is going too far. Yeah.
Well, you have some really explicit sexual stuff coming from the Catwoman side of things.
Yeah, and honestly, they cut a little of that out also.
Did they?
Yeah, which I noticed, again, because I read the book right before, but there were, again, this is nothing major, and I'm not being fanboyish about this at all, but they've got there's that first scene where we see Catwoman where she's got the guy in bed with her when she goes to the window, and they cut out most of his stuff, and that was some of the more sexually explicit stuff in the book.
I thought that because I remember that feeling really sleazy while reading it.
Yes.
And when I heard in the movie, I'm like, oh, that's a lot tamer than I remember it being. I didn't even think about them cutting it down.
I also think the affair is quite a bit tamer.
Yeah, it felt a little bit more, I don't want to say rushed, but like when we were like halfway through the movie, I was like, did they skip the affair? And it starts and I was like, oh, and then just kind of like, I don't know, it's a little understated.
Yeah, well, here's what's weird about it, and it's all a format thing from the book. So much of the story in the book comes from the narration, and they put as much of that in the movie as they possibly could, and it feels, a little hard-boiled, a little noirish, so it's working okay. It's not that big of a deal that the narration is there. You've probably heard me before say that sometimes I don't like it when movies do that. Here it was appropriate, but there were some places where they left narration out that makes some of that a little bit of a bigger deal. And the biggest one I'm thinking about is when Gordon is talking about how he and his wife are yelling at each other all the time.
Right.
And that's not in this movie, or at least I don't remember it there. I missed it if it was.
No, there's definitely no man.
And so it doesn't seem like those two are at odds enough that you understand why the affair is even happening, and the affair feels more in the background.
That stood out to me specifically that I remembered playing out very differently in the book, where she's giving him a back rub and the phone rings. I feel like I remember in the book him being almost an argument where he's like, oh, I forgot to leave the phone off the hook, I gotta get it. And then, he has to go off. Where in the movie, it was just like, no, don't get it. And then she just gets it, she's like, oh, it's the station.
Yeah, and okay, if you haven't read Year One and you haven't seen this movie and you're just listening to us talk about it, it probably sounds like we're talking about really nitpicky things. So I feel I need to mention.
It's not because it's tone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing about it is,
it's tone and theme.
There are single lines of narration and single lines of dialogue that give an entire extra layer to certain things that are going on. So when you take them out, it becomes weird. Another thing that I thought was kind of strange was that there were one or two places, and if I can remember a good example, I'll mention it. There was one place in particular where there was a line that used to be a narration that ended up in dialogue.
Do you know which one it was?
And I thought that was strange. If I can remember, I think it was in the diner when they're talking about their affair, and she's asking him if he would consider leaving his wife. And just before that part, he makes I can't remember. I'm going to look at the book real quick and see if I can remember exactly what the line is. There's like a comment she makes. Man, I wish I was more prepared than this. Well, go on. I'll find it.
There was a couple things here and there that there's one. That was the thing, is that there was a lot of scenes where because the movie isn't. It's not tame. I mean, it's not like it doesn't really feel like they're pulling punches, but they're kind of pulling punches if you've read the book, because there's a scene where there's this lawyer and she's talking to this guy, and she says don't point at pimp stuff, and I know that was far more Frank Miller in the book, where she's like, don't think you're just gonna get off because you're black or whatever.
Oh yeah,
and that's just gone. And I'm not really sure, but here's the thing. The movie feels like the PC version of Year One.
Yeah, right. Which seems odd because the PG-13 rating is there so you can make things like this.
Exactly. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that fight scene between Catwoman and not Batman, did that seem a little overblown to you?
Say that again. Which part?
The fight scene between Selina and Bruce in the alley, or not the alley, but the street.
What do you mean by overblown?
I don't know.
It was just longer than you remembered it, or?
And more grounded in the book, and in this it's superhero kung fu action.
Yeah,
I can see really out of place.
I will say it didn't take me out at all. I didn't notice it, but now that you say that, I can see that.
It just seems a little over the top for that movie. I don't know. I feel like I'm sounding like I'm nitpicking. I was very mad on the movie in general. Like, it was okay. The biggest thing I can say about the movie is that I thought Bryan Cranston was fantastic as Gordon.
Oh, wonderful. I would say the best Gordon I've heard since animated series.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. Oh, absolutely.
Eric, I found that spot I was talking about.
Okay,
can I mention it real quick? And here's what's really interesting. In the book, it's not even a conversation. He's talking about a conversation they're having, but we don't see any of it in dialogue. And he says, "Whoever told her she was masculine must have been blind, deaf, and dead."
Yeah, and he says that to her.
In the movie, he says it to her, and that took me out. It didn't seem like something he would actually come out and say to her.
Yeah, no, because it seems more like they're like flirty, and in the movie, that feels like an advance.
So, talking about voices, I didn't like the voice for Batman at all.
Okay, here's the thing, because I was warned by someone that it's terrible. The opening narration when he's flying into the city is one of the worst, like, professional voice acting I've ever heard. Mm-hmm. Like I've literally heard like people on YouTube doing like voice acting stuff that sounds better. Like, that was terrible. After that, I don't know if I just got used to him or I never grew to the point where I really liked him. He had this really weird, when he was being Bruce Wayne, he was trying to put on I think a suave accent, and that felt kind of weird. And then his Batman voice, he was very wrong for this part.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like he just didn't really get it. This is a tough part because the story is, of course, a lot more about Gordon than it is about Batman, and we don't get really in Batman's head in this. And so the person who is voicing Batman has to convince us of a lot of things without us being as close to Batman as we usually are. I mean, there is none of the usual pomp and circumstance surrounding this movie that you usually get with a Batman movie. I thought I'd mention that too for anybody who hasn't seen this. I mean, there is no opening credit sequence. There's no big score. It's simply you jump right into it, and then at the end you really kind of jump right out of it.
One of the things, this is one of the things I don't like about the book, and one of the reasons why, to me, the book isn't as big a deal as it is to everyone else on the planet, is that... Which is
ironic, because I like this more than most of Frank Miller's stuff.
Yeah, well, first of all, I've never been a fan of Gordon cheating on his wife. That feels like I know the point is to humanize him, but that, I don't like that.
See, I didn't and I know I always call back to this, but...
My biggest problem is what I like about Batman is the psychology, and there's none of that here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's, but it's not to say that Year One's a bad story. It's just not exactly my Batman. It's not really entirely what I'm looking for. But there was, see, the thing about this book, about this movie, is that this was made for fans, and after seeing it, I'm kind of like, why? Because, here's the thing. I think I would like this far better if this was the pilot for a new series, as opposed to a standalone movie. Because a standalone movie, I'm far more nitpicky. There's just little things in it that, when Bruce is sitting in the chair when he's been shot, and he's the bell, and there's that really iconic image of the bat bursting through and you seeing the bat's face as it breaks through the window, and they don't use that shot. You see it from the side.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
I was like, why? There was a lot of weird choices around. I was just like, why would you change that?
I would say that for a movie that was supposed to be made for fans, it like you said, it feels almost superfluous. I don't know why I needed to see this when I've already read the book. And that sounds weird because I know that a lot of times us fans like to talk about source material, and we talk about how things compare to the source material, and we sometimes
I'm a big fan of
wish
sticking
things
to the
got
book.
closer.
I love Sin City, I do.
But in this particular
there was
case,
something about this where it felt like it was the book, but less.
I think it was almost the wrong pick for something to do straightforward. Like when you read the book, there are pages where you've got 2 or 3 dates on the same page, where you jump from March whatever to March something else on the same page.
That was actually I felt like the movie was having a lot of trouble conveying that.
Yeah, and I mean, it was trying, but it's just, this is so much of a comic book format thing, where, like, Frank Miller is playing with the format and showing you what you can do with a minimal amount of pages. We cover an entire year. Yeah. On the other hand, what I would say is this is, more than any other adaptation they've ever done, something that you would show a person who refuses to read comic books but wants to know the story, because you can show it to them and they've got it.
The thing I had with this, where I was like, I feel like I could show this to people who's never read the book, and they're going to get more out of it than I will.
Yeah, exactly, and they could almost say they've read the book.
Yeah, almost. What's different? Well, Gordon smokes. Actually, everybody smokes.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff we're talking about are different. Your average Joe on the street isn't going to care about. It's like, why do those little things matter?
There are a lot of minute things. I don't know. I almost feel like there's all these small little changes that just, like, it wasn't like I was consciously thinking about every single time, like, stacking them up. It almost felt like it was stacking up in my head, like, to when I got to the end of the movie, I was like, well, that was almost the book.
Yeah.
But it's still very, very close.
Yeah, and it's really well made. I guess there's just a part of me that kind of wishes, and this is in hindsight, looking at all the other things that they've made. I mean, there's just a part of me that kind of wishes, well, if they felt the need to do this so close, considering that it's a weird format for a movie, why couldn't they have done that something a little bit closer with some of the other things that they've done? Because I mean, I can't. I don't know. I always go back to this, but I can't show anybody Superman Doomsday, and then they understand anything about Reign of the Supermen, which is one of my favorite arcs. So,
right.
That's that seems kind of unfair. I don't know.
The one thing about this is, it makes me really hopeful for Dark Knight Returns, because this was so accurate, and I feel like Dark Knight Returns is an easier to translate film, or story to film, because it's not as choppy, it's not as jumpy, it flows a little bit smoother. Whereas, like one of the things I thought was hard for this in animated is that it really felt like scene cut.
Yeah, well, it does. That's what it is.
Well,
it's little tiny vignettes that are all connected. Yeah.
I don't know, I really think, like, maybe this just wasn't the best choice for adaptation. But because of how close they did keep it, it gives me hope for Returns, especially since Returns is getting to split into 2 movies.
I would also say that for people who didn't read the book and are interested in seeing this, it's probably going to show them where a bunch of stuff from Begins and Dark Knight came from that they didn't realize.
Absolutely.
And I remember thinking, oh yeah, that's where the whole bats flying in with the thing under his boot came from. Because I mean, like in Begins and in this, it's both a thing he presses on his boot.
Yeah. Well, you know what's something that I didn't like about the movie? I want to say pacing, but it's not pacing. There was a couple of scenes I felt like they should have taken longer. There were 2 key scenes with Batman that felt really rushed to me. The one where he walks in on the all of the important people of Gotham, which is my favorite scene in the entire book. That felt like it took like 3 seconds. Like, he just walks in and he's like, "You've stolen the heart of Gotham. You're not safe." Click.
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah, that was too quick. Well, that's the thing, is that you almost need to spend more time with Batman. Yeah.
And the one almost falls, that scene felt really, really fast, too.
See, you're so in Gordon's head the whole time that you almost need to spend more time watching Batman doing things while he's not talking to you to get any sense of his character.
Right.
If that makes any sense, the brooding, foreboding Batman who walks into rooms and freaks people out. You don't have those long. I mean, in a comic book, you can stare at those panels and it feels like the pacing is different.
Yeah, I know. But that, I don't know, that scene in particular felt like it went by really fast. And well, it doesn't help the voice actor is not the. Here's the thing. I feel like if he was doing like an audiobook, it would sound more passable. But because it's being put to motion, like it really feels like it. I don't know. He wasn't good. He wasn't terrible, but he was far from the best. And I think what they're going for was trying to really get a younger sounding Batman that just didn't work.
Yeah. And then at the same time, they had some talent in this that I'd love to see them use for some other things that get more dialogue. Because, I mean, Sarah Essence played by Katie Sackhoff, and I wouldn't have known that if it weren't for the credits.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And then of course...
Well, Elijah Dushku is fantastic.
She's a good character.
As Selena, because you never stop and think it's her. She just, like, I don't know, the way whatever she did... You're just immediately like, okay, that's Selena.
Yeah.
Like, it's just pitch perfect.
Yeah, it's good. Did you watch the short?
I did watch the short.
I didn't care for it.
That was really weird.
Yeah, it's...
I was really off put when she took off the modern mask and it was year one Selena.
Yeah, that was really strange. I don't know what they were doing with that.
Also, it was written by Paul Dini.
Yeah.
And I was... Okay, like... Half of that thing takes place in a strip club in which Catwoman stripped, and I was like, maybe I'm not the audience for this exactly, because I thought I was going to get like a story or something. Like, I don't know, it felt really weird and skeezy.
Yeah, it kind of was, and then the majority of it's one big chase scene, and I was like, I felt, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I just felt like it was a little bit wasted compared to some of the other shorts they've done.
Well, and it's so weird because he's shown that he can write in that short format. I mean, his entire run of Batman was basically one and done.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just really strange to have him.
Well, what do you mean? He wrote most of the best animated series episodes. Those are 22 minutes. I mean,
yeah, but this is 10.
What's that?
Like I can see how it's a bit more difficult, but everyone else has just done such a good job.
Yeah, but I'm just saying but that was Dini, right? I mean, like he's like the master of short form when it comes to screen.
Yeah, and I didn't know he wrote it until it was like credits like written by Paul Dini. I'm like, oh, well, this is going to be really good. And
yeah.
I don't know, it wasn't. It felt really like dirty. Like I felt dirty watching it. Like it felt like something like a fan would make to get off to. Like I was uncomfortable watching it.
Well, ultimately, with year one itself, I think we've probably come off as being harder on it than we meant to.
I would, in all honesty, probably give it a pass.
Or at least not buy it. Like if you have a chance to see it somewhere, it's worth watching.
On Netflix in like 3 months.
Sure, yeah.
It's worth a watch. It's not a must buy.
No, I don't think so either.
Which is actually. Did you have any trouble getting your copy?
No, I went right out to Target and grabbed one.
See, because I went to Walmart. I went to a Walmart, didn't have any. Went to another Walmart, and I got the last copy. I was
Weird.
like, is this, like, really selling?
No, the place I went had a huge box full of both versions.
Oh, well.
So, I don't know.
My Walmart didn't even have 2 versions, so... I got to do this version because that was the only one they had.
Well, they always have both, and I still, and I don't like to complain about this, but I do have to mention that the 2-disc, once again, they didn't put nearly enough content on it for it to be worth the extra $5.
No, they need to stop doing those. Here's some select episodes, and just take those documentary things and throw them on the first disc.
Yeah.
Because that documentary was actually that documentary was terrible because Frank Miller's not in it.
Oh, there was a documentary. I didn't know that.
I was watching it. My girlfriend just goes, "Oh, is he dead?" I was like, "No, Frank Miller's not dead." She's like, "Then why is he in this?" Because they just spend so much time talking about his work, and it's really weird that he does not show up in that documentary. Like it really makes that documentary feel like it's missing things.
Well, Eric, we somehow rather managed to get close to half an hour anyway.
Did we?
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's all nitpicks.
Well, anyway, this is most certainly probably not the most entertaining thing we've ever recorded, but...
No. Well, neither was the animated movie, so...
But I am looking forward to the next one. It looks good. I'm
excited for Justice League Doom, and I'm super excited for Returns, which I think is after is Justice League Doom, right?
I think it's supposed to be right after. I don't think there's anything else between it, huh?
Yeah, but no, I'm excited for Doom. Did you watch the little Doom documentary on the DVD?
I did.
Okay, is Bane not spot on?
Yeah, but isn't that the same Bane voice they used to use?
I don't think so, because I don't know, that Bane, like, he sounded where I was like, that's what Bane sounds like.
I'd have to look it up, because they put him in the middle of that whole section where they were talking about all the voices they brought back.
Yeah, but I guess, he did, I don't know.
But I don't know, I haven't looked, I'll have to check. But yeah, it sounded like...
And Mirror Master's design sucks. But
yeah, I didn't care for that, but I don't know, it sounded like really close to the same voice, he just was, a bit more refined and...
Yeah, that was the thing. I don't know, he sounded more menacing. But no, I'm excited for Justice League Doom. It looks good.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening to this special edition of us reviewing something that we didn't...
This mediocre edition of...
Kind of yeah.
Geekvolution.
Right. And we'll hopefully review something again for you sometime soon. Eric, we need to have you back more often.
Yeah.
And hopefully one of these days over Skype and not by phone.
Hey, I'm sometime soon going to get Holy Terror. If you read that at the store, we can totally review that together.
Ooh, I don't know how much interest I have in reading that, Eric.
Well, I'm super excited.
All right. Well, I'm just not the big Frank Miller person you are, and I kind of hate that it was
it's
supposed to be
Batman,
Batman, but it's not Batman. Yeah.
Kinda.
I'm just not sure why I'm supposed to care now.
Because it's not Batman.
But that's why I don't care now.
No.
So
I'm excited because it's not Batman, not Catwoman, and not Commissioner Gordon fighting terrorists.
Yeah, but you're going to be disappointed because you're going to read it and go, "Oh, that was Batman. It just wasn't Batman."
Yeah, but see, I'm okay with that. I'm
Really?
completely like, I'm just going to read it and be like, well, yeah, that's Batman, except that now he kills.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again, everybody, for listening. I'm Captain Logan.
I am Eric.
And we'll talk to you later.